How's it going, everyone? It's Sam. Today we're going through why you want $1,000 worth of Bitcoin right now. Now, I will say, I think there's a huge amount of return that we can get in Bitcoin specifically and in cryptocurrency, and there's never really been a less risky time to invest in it. This is by far the safest time to invest in Bitcoin. And we also have a decrease in price over the last few years from the top. So I would highly suggest staying through to the end of the video, even if you know about Bitcoin, even if you watch every single video. I think this is going to be really valuable for you. Maybe share this to someone you know. And if you like this hat, I made it. You can check out the link underneath the video. Just scroll down a little bit, click on this Bitcoin is Freedom hat, and you can grab yourself one as well. Now, first of all, if you don't know too much about Bitcoin, I would highly suggest doing some research on it right now. It's a great time because we are in a bear market and we do have decreased prices. Now, I think the first reason you might want to invest in Bitcoin is just because it has done extremely well as an asset. The amount of appreciation you've gotten from Bitcoin has outpaced just about every other asset out here. Here is kind of an eye chart. There's a lot going on here, but it basically shows different asset classes and how well they've returned each year. Now, this stopped in 2021, but as you can see here, in 2011, Bitcoin was the best asset in terms of return. In 2012, best asset was Bitcoin. 2013, Bitcoin. 2014, it wasn't Bitcoin. It was actually VNQ, which is a real estate investment trust. But Bitcoin was actually the worst performing asset that year. Then the next 3 years, Bitcoin was the best performing asset, then the worst. And then the next 3 years, it was the best performing asset. So in case you haven't noticed, it's the best performing asset most years. And there's always 1 year where it dips down. It's the bear market, which is what we had in 2022. You can see 3 great years, 1 bad year, 3 great years, 1 bad year, 3 great years. And then in 2022, it was also a bad year, probably the worst performing asset. This year, it's the best performing asset again. So we're geared up for 2023 to be a great year, 2024 to be a great year, 2025 to be a great year, just based on prior returns. And of course, this doesn't even count 2010 when we had even larger return than 2011, 2012, 2013. But this just shows how great an asset Bitcoin is, and it has performed extremely well in the past pretty consistently. From there, you can look at just the ability to buy something that is censorship resistant. So even if you don't care about returns, well, this gives you more freedom. This is talking about the truckers freeze back in 2022. So if you don't remember this, basically the government of Canada froze funds without court orders. They invoked an emergency act to be able to give Canadian banks the ability to freeze funds suspected of being directed to the protest without court order, and they will protect them from legal retribution. So basically, they enacted something that allowed them to not have due process, to not have courts kind of checking what they're doing. They can just go and freeze funds of anyone that they think is tied to the protests that were going on about COVID. Now, whether you believe in what they're trying to protest or not, whether you agree with that or not, it shows that the governments can freeze your money, can freeze your assets, can freeze your stored wealth just because they don't like what you're talking about or what you're doing. Also, it's not just the people that were actually protesting. It also allowed them to target the accounts of people who had donated to crowdfunding platforms like GoFundMe and GiveSendGo to the protesters. However, they can't do that with your Bitcoin. They can't freeze your Bitcoin. If you want to send them Bitcoin, because they started doing this, if let's say you had 100 Bitcoin on a wallet and you sent 0.1 Bitcoin, it's not like they can go and freeze the rest of your Bitcoin. If you can actually use it to exchange for goods and services, well, then you're good to go. You can still use your Bitcoin. Of course, getting it off might be a little bit trickier because they might be watching your bank accounts if you want to turn it into USD, but a lot of people are starting to consider accepting Bitcoin or already are. Also, we saw other platforms start to give out fines for misinformation, for things that they didn't want said. PayPal said that they would fine users $2,500 for misinformation. Now they've rolled that back, but it shows you how far people are willing to go to control your money and to control your assets. Now, there's also a case to be made for just having more access to your assets, to be able to send money whenever you want without an intermediary, not even because they're going to freeze your assets or anything like that, but these are the hours of a local Chase bank by me. They're open 9 to 5. What if you work? What if you have to send a payment at night? Well, you can use Venmo and PayPal and those types of things, but their fees, pretty hefty fees some of the time. They also watch what you do. They limit what you do. So maybe you want to send a payment on Sunday and you don't want to go through one of these. Well, you can use Bitcoin. You can access your funds all the time, send it without some kind of third party looking at what you're doing, saying you can do this, you can't do that, that kind of thing. You're also able to move with your assets, which is something really useful too. If you want to move your assets across the world, and this is something that we saw with Ukrainians. We saw a couple people that actually were able to carry their seed phrase or carry their wallets over to another country while they had to leave all their other assets behind. So that can be pretty useful as well in the worst case scenario. You can also buy Bitcoin to stop inflation, basically to stop yourself from the government taking away your money through inflation. If you had bought something, let's say you put $1,000 aside for your kid when they were born in 1995. Now in 2023, that $1,000 is worth half as much. You'd actually need to have about $2,000 to buy whatever was $1,000 on average. Some things have gotten a lot more expensive. Let's look at college, for example. It would be 10 to 15 times more expensive. Healthcare, really significantly more expensive as well. As time goes on, the government prints more and more money, but they can't do that with Bitcoin. Bitcoin has an inflation rate of 1.8% right now. At the next Bitcoin halving, it's going to be less because they're going to cut the amount of new issued Bitcoin. So it should be around 0.9% inflation. And this continues on. It's set in the code so no one can change it. Now, from there, why do I say you need $1,000, right? You can see all the benefits of Bitcoin, but why $1,000? Well, I could say anything. I think $1,000 though is a level that is achievable by most people that are watching this video. I think over time, I'm not saying you can go buy $1,000 tomorrow, but over time you can accumulate $1,000, and that gives you a bit of freedom. That gives you a bit of wiggle room. That is an emergency fund for some people in Bitcoin. That's maybe 2 weeks of expenses. It's a missed paycheck. It allows you to start your journey, buying Bitcoin, secure your financial future. And if you look at how many people are on Earth and how many Bitcoin there are, each person on average can have about 0.002625 Bitcoin if they were spread evenly. Now, I don't think that's very likely. I think there's more like 15 million Bitcoin that are actually going to be available to people because a lot of people have just lost their Bitcoin over time. A lot of people have sent it to the wrong address. And I think it's way less than that yet because there are a lot of people that are just holding on to a lot of Bitcoin. There are a lot of people that have a lot of wealth. So let's say everyone has an equal share of the Bitcoin that's going to be left. Let's say there's 15 million Bitcoin left. Well, that means you could get about 0.001875. I think if you're watching this video, you can strive for more than that because you're probably in a better situation than most people on Earth. So this $1,000 would get you about 20 times what the average person on Earth could have. So most people, if we split Bitcoin evenly, the average person could only have $50 worth of Bitcoin. You can buy $1,000 today, and that would give you about 20 times what they could get. Now, let me know your thoughts on all this underneath the video. If you want to see some other videos that I've made recently, like why buy Bitcoin, an intro to Bitcoin for beginners, because it is confusing. There's a lot going with Bitcoin. I'll leave that on the end screen along with a video on levels of wealth of Bitcoin. Like how much Bitcoin do you need to be really wealthy in the future? Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. If you want to check out what I'm buying or selling, you can check out the link to the Patreon. If you want to trade cryptocurrencies, you can check out the link to BITGET. And if you want to get one of these sweet Bitcoin is Freedom hats, you can check out the link underneath the video. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.